Welcome back to Sunday Vibes, one and all. We're back in the Phoenix pub on Oxford Circus. We're not sure when this is going out, but we've brought 4 players to the game today, including a Chelsea expert, Zach Jalab, because we've got a huge topic to discuss. Tommy Tuchel out, Graham Potter in.
Close personal friend of Zach Jalab, Tommy Tuchel.
Zach Jalab in tears this weekend.
Straight to the job centre.
I'm excited to talk about this topic.
It's like Football Daddy's version of a UN summit.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about this
table
topic,
goes
though.
on forever.
It's been off camera, already quite heated discussion about what we're going to talk about. So let's start, shall we, with Tommy T? Thomas Tuchel?
Absolutely.
We've got the Chelsea fan in. Was it the right decision?
No. I would have given Thomas Tuchel a lot longer. I think realistically he could have been given till the World Cup, and if things were really going that bad, then afterwards you can make a change. He's someone that kind of came in at a very tough time, especially after Frank Lampard left, and I think a lot of fans didn't quite know what to expect with Tuchel. Obviously he'd just got to the Champions League final with PSG, and that was really fantastic to see, but I think a lot of fans were quite sad that Lampard had left, especially because they felt like Lampard was the future, and that when he was at the club, even at the first kind of hurdle, he'd be given a chance. However, it didn't happen, and so but the way Thomas Tuchel came in and got all the fans on board. I didn't expect to like Tuchel as much as I did so quickly. He had a great personality, but not just that, he got results. From the off, he got results, and obviously winning the Champions League
After 5 months
after
helps,
5
doesn't
months,
it?
definitely helps. And obviously after the window that's just happened, bringing in Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang to then give him the chop after 6 games feels quite quick. I mean, on reports that behind the scenes there were big huge tensions between obviously the new owners and himself. But from my own personal point of view, I would have given him a lot longer. I think he had more credit in the bank, and just he's one of the best managers in the world. I watched Team Talk back a couple of days after, and literally yesterday, and what we're saying, for him to then be sacked 5 days later was mad.
Yeah. I also think he thought he was going to get a lot more time, didn't he? I think he was under the impression that he was going to be signing a new contract relatively soon that had been sort of agreed verbally, in inverted commas, but wasn't meant to be, Joseph.
I think it's one of the worst sackings in Premier League history. I think it's absolutely
worse than Carlo Ancelotti
of a sacking. It's up there. It is up there. I mean, for a manager to go 4th, 3rd, reach 5 cup finals, win 3 of them. What more was he meant to do? He's not going to win the league title. Whoever comes in is not going to win a league title while Pep and Klopp are here. It's impossible. They're so much better than everybody else.
Weren't you were tipping Chelsea to be potential title winners just over a year ago? You were like, they've just won the Champions League, they've added a £100 million striker,
but he didn't
they
work.
should be
The strike
competing
didn't
for
work.
they
The strike
should
didn't work.
but that's kind of on the manager, isn't it?
And the player as well. I think some of the stuff
I
with
agree,
Lukaku
but
did wasn't Tuchel's fault.
But saying Chelsea are set up to challenge for the title, well, and then they finish 3rd, and you say, well, how are they ever going to challenge for the title? Well, everybody said this is how they challenge for the title.
Well,
I think they did underperform last
playing well,
season.
wasn't it? And he didn't play well. He didn't play well. Lukaku didn't work. If Lukaku had worked, I still believe that Tuchel would have taken them really close. He took them to 2 cup finals last year, and they finished 3rd. They were penalties away from having as good of a season, if not a better season, than Liverpool.
But this was Tuchel's idea to bring him in. Tuchel wanted him, and it's Tuchel's responsibility to get something out of him. You can't just say, "Oh well, the player didn't work. What are you going to do?" I do think that he's been underperforming for a bit. That's not necessarily an argument to get rid of him, but we're looking now at his time at Chelsea in the aggregate, and we're like, "Wow, won 60 of his 100 games. Only lost 16 times." But at the same time, recently the form has taken a significant downturn. The attack has become really quite toothless. The loss against Leeds was brutal. The loss against Southampton was bad. The loss against Dinamo Zagreb, hot on the heels. And of course, with all of this as well, all along, Tuchel's kind of had results. And so if things get rough with you personally, you can at least say, well, I've got the results. But he has this bad relationship with Bowley by all accounts. And at that point, if you're not getting results, then Bowley's going to say, why would I tolerate this? I hate you. Get out.
It's been quite as knee-jerk as some people are making it out. I think it's a 48% win ratio in the Premier League since December. Only 9 clean sheets in 31
then why
games.
back him?
Why
back him?
No, I agree. That's what makes
point.
this really difficult to debate, because there is lots of spinning plates, isn't there? And I do think this is more personal than it is business. because I do think Tuchel could still achieve results. Clearly, Bowley leaned very heavily on him in the summer in terms of recruitment. There was a little bit of resentment from Tuchel on that front, clearly, because it took him away from coaching. So maybe that's what stirred those negative feelings behind the scenes. But this whole 100-day review thing, it does make a bit of a mockery of getting Tuchel, a lot of the targets he wanted, or bringing in Aubameyang, for example, asking him where to go for player recruitment. So I don't think this is a particularly long-term plan from Bowley, or something that's been
like months in the making,
in the offing for a long time. I do just think that it's probably become untenable behind the scenes. With everyone's personalities, big personalities sort of clashing, which makes it very hard for us to sort of debate the still quantify. But yeah, this does feel, like I said, more personal than business.
Yeah, and the idea that this is like, I'm thinking about a long-term strategy, and I'm thinking about this long-term strategy for a long time. Well, if that's the case, 5 weeks ago, why were we going for Ronaldo? Like, the alignment is not there. The alignment at some stage between going for Cristiano Ronaldo and sacking Tuchel has gone from one direction to a totally different direction, which makes me extremely concerned, given that there's no sporting team behind the scenes, and they don't have a sporting director anymore. The chairman's gone, the head of recruitment's gone, the CEO's gone, now the coach is gone. So the guys making these calls 5 weeks ago wanted Cristiano Ronaldo. Now they want Graham Potter and a 10-year project manager. Who's been advising them on those courses of actions? Because I've never seen two more polar opposite
Thomas
courses.
Tuchel. Thomas Tuchel was the one that was doing the advising. Don't get me wrong, I'm in agreement. I think it, as I've already said, I think it was the wrong decision to do it now. But within that time space, he has, I guess, thought about, maybe he has come to that realization of, all right, we're not going to be winning the Premier League within the next 2 years, right? And that's not going to be whereas Tuchel wants to. Like, every time he talked about Tuchel, and even when he first came in, he said he wants to be winning trophies now. He wants to be, and that's absolutely fair enough. I think that's, especially for a manager of his pedigree. Like, of course he wants to be doing that. But maybe, I don't know this for a fact or whatever, but maybe Bowley has had a bit of a brainwave in the past those 5 weeks, in the past 3 weeks, and gone, you know what? Okay, we're not winning in the next 2 years. We need to start this project. Tuchel didn't really look like he was ready to do a project right now. If anything, he didn't give any minutes to teenagers last year. Billy Gilmore, obviously he was one of the guys to also say he's willing for him to leave the club. I mean, that's another one into why would you sell him?
Sold Billy Gilmore
I agree.
To Potter to improve and then take Potter.
I agree, but then maybe he has had this brainwave where he thought, look, okay, we need to make a decision soon. And there is a part of me that understands as well, what if you have come to the conclusion that you want to sack him, that you're kind of open to sacking the manager, is there much point in waiting until, say, October, November time to do it, when you can just do it now, get it done with? Yes, it's rough, a lot of the fans are going to be happy, but then you can get in someone like Graham Potter, who supposedly you want for a long time, and have him working from September onwards, rather than waiting further down the line for that to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, like you said, there is a divergence in his thinking, but he is allowed to change his mind. He does own the club. Clearly, like, long-term, I don't know, solidity is something that he strives for. Obviously, he owns part owner of the LA Dodgers, isn't he? Co-owner, the manager there, or American equivalent coach, has been there for 7 years, just signed a new 3-year contract. And I think he does perhaps strive for stability, and he didn't see that unfurling with Thomas Tuchel. Maybe he's too combative a character. Maybe he just thought...
So he saw it a week ago, though, when he signed Aubameyang?
No, I don't think... I don't buy into the long-term plan thing, as in, like, he didn't head to English shores, spend £2.5 billion on a club with any sort of knowledge, I don't think, of Graham Potter beforehand. Maybe Graham Potter came to the fore when he was negotiating the Cucurella deal.
Supposedly that is
and he hears good things about him, does his research, thinks that he aligns with how he wants Chelsea to pan out in the future. He's still allowed to go for Ronaldo and have more long-term aspirations. He was clearly thinking, I just need to get my manager a number 9. At that point, like, it's not as, I don't think it has to be as binary as, like, well, I'm a visionary, so I can't sign Ronaldo to fix the short term. Like, we've seen Erik ten Hag compromise on his style of play, haven't we, to achieve results in the short term. You can do that on a management level as well, but yeah, I can see why you think he's been treated very harshly.
Yeah, especially as well, I also want to point out the job that he did during the takeover as the face of Chelsea Football Club, when everything was collapsing around him, and he was saying, if we need to, I'll drive a minibus to the Champions League because they weren't allowed to spend money on that and there's no fans. I think that could have also played a part in the downturn of results, by the way. The fact that they weren't allowed fans in the home stadium.
I agree.
I think that's a clear beneficiary factor for away teams coming and allowed to bring away fans and will hinder Chelsea. So there's just so many caveats for me of things that Tuchel did brilliantly at the club, the way that he got them playing. I know that they've recently been not as good, but overall, I just think it's an unbelievable decision what he's done at that club.
I sympathise with him. There's apparently a big factor in this is him losing the dressing room, right? And like most attacking players wanted out at Chelsea this summer. There was 5 of them, allegedly. Obviously, Lukaku, Timo Werner, Callum Hudson-Odoi left. I'm sure they would have thought about staying if they knew Graham Potter was a manager more amenable to
a fresh start
playing them again. Yeah, was going to be there. But I do sympathise with Tuchel when he didn't have Granovskaya around him, when he didn't have Petr Cech around him, then struggling to manage players, to manage expectations, people's minutes. Like, he lost his support network. He became Todd Bowley's at the start of the season. And as such, I do think you should expect there to be a little bit more friction behind the scenes because there's not enough people there to keep all these players happy.
Yeah.
So there was, I think, maybe an unfair amount of responsibility put on his shoulders, but then the way he responded maybe tipped Bowley and co over the edge because there was constant complaints in the media, wasn't there, about Petr Cech being sacked,
even though Cech walked himself, but
about the recruitment. Like, he got the number 1 target, Sterling, but missed out on several others like Frankie de Jong, Kimpembe. Who else was there?
Rafinha, Koundé.
Jules Koundé.
Yeah, I think and the other thing as well, there's nothing. I don't think Tuchel leaves this job with his reputation in tatter like that. If anything, I think it's given it the bump after the PSG sacking. I think he can realistically walk into any job. Whether he does that soon, I don't know. Only time remains to be seen. Maybe it's something that he waits until after the World Cup. But supposedly, according to reports, he's eager to get back into it.
On the flip side of that, do any of you think that he's going to he's now got a reputation as someone that refuses to manage big name players because of the whole Ronaldo thing, because of Neymar, because of Mbappe?
I don't think it's big name players. Like, it's not great that maybe all 3 of his clubs he's fallen out with the board. Because I think actually with Roman and the board that were there, and
Dortmund, notoriously impossible to manage.
And Dortmund as well, which isn't amazing considering they're actually quite a fun club per se. But I think he actually did get on with the way that things were running with Roman. Like, he liked the fact that he was just the coach. Marina was doing all of it. But then, obviously, unforeseen circumstances happen. And, like, if Roman's still here and the same board and that's still here, like, Tuchel's 100% still here as well and has that money in the bank to kind of, if results are going poor, to be okay, obviously, with the Champions League just having happened.
New owners want to pick their own guy.
Exactly.
It's not a massive revelation.
It's like any company, man.
I have a problem with that, but
more often than not,
pick him at a time when you haven't just backed your manager entirely throughout the year. You've got a tired course this summer and given him a world record transfer spend that includes Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang up front at 33 on a 3-year contract.
Sure, but I don't think those transfers that came in are necessarily like awful, that they're not going to work under Graham Potter. Like, Koulibaly is still whether what people think of him, Koulibaly is still an elite centre back who can be used in a 3 at the back system, even a 4 at the back system. And Graham Potter, I'm sure, is looking at it going, Koulibaly's great.
But Graham Potter might have also wanted to go £300 million to spend. I'll spend it on him.
But
I don't know. I think the players that we brought in aren't too bad for any manager to come in and be that disappointed.
You wouldn't have been able to do that earlier.
Particularly Potter.
Why?
Well, firstly, you couldn't have sacked Tuchel at that point. I think it took the bad start to the season to make Tuchel kind of sackable. Plus, if you brought Potter in, what Potter has never done is run transfers. Like, he obviously has a say in the way all managers do, and he's brought his recruitment guy with him from Brighton, his kind of right-hand man. But what he doesn't have experience of is conducting transfers for bigger clubs. So he can come in and tell you who he wants, but we don't know that he could do that. He's worked in a very structured system.
Why does Potter get that leeway and Tuchel doesn't? We don't know that Tuchel has been traditionally going out there and being asked to recruit players and find transfer targets and pick up players and start conversations with players. He might have had at other clubs people doing that for him. Now he's been asked the whole summer to do that, and then after it they've gone, we're not sure about that.
No, I'm not saying that it's reasonable to ask Tuchel to do it either. But Tuchel was at the club, like, when it was happening. I think that it would have been hard to get rid of Tuchel at the end of last season, bring in Potter, and then say, oh, by the way, you also need to come in and run our transfer policy. I think that would have been also a big risk. I don't think that would have made the situation that much better. And let's face it, what Potter has shown at Brighton is that he can pretty much put together a competent team with whatever he's handed. Like, the talent drain out of Brighton has been pretty staggering. The attacking talent is pretty weak, and yet they've always been a good side at the very least, and at times they've been a very good side. So I don't know, I kind of look at it and I think, right, none of us think it's particularly fair that Tuchel went, though to varying degrees, but I think Potter is a very sensible hire.
I think Bowley's managed to rein it back in by going for someone so progressive like Graham Potter, who's clearly been primed for a top job for a long time, obviously rejected Tottenham. So it's one of those like weird set of emotions, particularly for Chelsea fans, where you kind of agree with the hire, but you kind of disagree with the main reasons why your guy has been sacked.
1 million
And like stylistically, there is a lot of continuity there. Like Pat's just highlighted, this is a guy, Graham Potter, that mostly plays three at the back. A lot of his possession is defensive with a view to quick transitions. That he has deployed players in, I don't know, let's say uncharacteristic or unfamiliar territory, like Trossard at fullback or Pascal Gross as a false nine. Yeah, exactly. A certain amount of that creative thinking will be required in this job, because there are certain areas of the pitch that will need, I don't know, like his creativity to overcome the shortfall in quality or whatever. I'm thinking central midfielder.
Worries me a bit. Well, if he goes and goes Sterling, can you play left back? He's going to go.
Well,
no.
Well, he's not going to do just. He's not going to do.
That would be bizarre.
He's not going to do
bizarre
stuff at random.
to debate, but.
He's not going to do stuff at random. But certainly his track record, right, is of making players more valuable, of adding stuff to their game. You know, like they lose Bissouma. Well, it kind of looks like guys like Caicedo and Mwepu have really taken a step up. Obviously Cucurella arrived for about 15 mil, I think, and left for 60.
Like he redeployed him to left centre back, which made him so appealing to Chelsea.
And Ben White as well, you know, like he added elements to Ben White's game. Like this is a guy who's done this again and again and again. So you look at that squad, and especially the young players, and actually it is a pretty young squad still. You look at it and you say, there's a lot that he can do with this. So I think it's quite exciting.
I really like Graham Potter. I think he's definitely, as we said on Team Talk, I think he's up and amongst this, like getting close to the top 5 managers in the division. I just think the circumstances upon the arrival would concern me if I was Graham Potter. You know, when he arrived at Brighton, very, very solid foundations with Tony Bloom and Dan Ashworth, a really solid recruitment department, despite the fact results hadn't worked really under Chris Hughton. He now arrives at Chelsea with no sporting director, no technical director, no head of recruitment, no chairman, no CEO, and is now being asked to help select sporting
those positions
directors.
have been filled, but...
Well, they haven't. You haven't got a sporting director.
Yeah, not that one, but the other ones that you mentioned
Or
have
technical
been.
director.
But the other ones that you have, like chairman, there is.
And you haven't got head of
there isn't
recruitment.
now.
But that's
Well,
kind
now,
of
but
okay,
also,
like in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree, but I'm just saying that those settled decisions and structures aren't in place like they were at Brighton, which I think it isn't the easiest for Graham Potter to come into. If they come in now, and let's say he recommends a sporting director, Chelsea's owners go, we're going to go in this direction, and it's not Michael Edwards, let's say, it's somebody on the continent, and they choose to bring him in.
Paul Mitchell.
And he then doesn't like Potter. Is who wins out?
It's
but
problematic that the director of football is inheriting the manager, because that's not how it should
bizarre,
be. Right?
So backwards.
Well, except for the fact that obviously, you know, Bowley's going to say, we've just hired Graham Potter.
Yeah.
So if you're going to take this job, you're going to have to work with Graham Potter. And like that there will be a degree of chemistry there that's expected, as in Potter will probably be part of the interview process. I know what you mean. It is a little bit backwards, but I don't think it's that bad a situation. The fact that Potter has turned down Spurs in the past suggests that he's got his head screwed on and he knows what he can and can't do. He knows where he does need support. So I'm pretty certain that Potter will have said, if I'm going to come in, then I need to have, like, by January, you need to have these guys in place.
Yeah, for sure.
The bigger issue to me right now is that Bowley is being very hands-on. And where the technical director and sporting director do help you is that when the club owner is trying to be hands-on, they insulate you from that.
Yeah.
You know, they're the person who says, I've got a text from Stan Kroenke, you know, maybe I'm not going to show Mikel. Like, at the moment, it just feels like Todd can just text Thomas and be like, we're playing, like,
We're
text
signing
Graham
Ronaldo.
and be like, we're playing 4-4-3. Like, we're signing, you know, stuff like that. And then Graham's got to be like, Oh God, you know, so he's dealing with the squad and he's dealing with the ownership level.
But I think
he needs some insulation.
But the plan is to have one in before the World Cup. Like, that is coming. It's going to happen before January. And so, like, I completely agree. I think it's not great. I also heard rumours that he went into the dressing room.
4-4-3, man. So good.
So like, it's not amazing having that kind of level at the moment. But I do think that is coming. Like it, and I'm sure like Potter would have had assurances to be like, yeah, this sporting director is going to come. This person's going to be filled.
But
he's also
it's not
Potter's
naive.
also brought in like 6 of his backroom staff, which is a lot to bring in as well. He's going to be surrounded by people he knows and is comfortable around. Like it's a situation where like Chelsea have done something nuts, but weirdly have actually probably going to come out of it okay.
Yeah.
Like,
And I think
I agree with
when
that
someone buys it or leads a consortium that buys a club for close to $3 billion or whatever it was, they're going to be hands-on at the start. Like I think we have to wait and see if he oversteps the mark or not. If he does employ a sporting director around the World Cup and makes good on his plans, then fair enough. Maybe he isn't this guy that interferes on an operational level, like on a day-to-day basis, which would be annoying for any manager. But
it's worth noting as well.
I think he's well within his rights to do that, or to have been on the ground for the first 100 days.
He also
or
hasn't
whatever.
done a bad job.
And he did the
this summer.
same with the baseball team as well. When they first took over as well, he was very hands-on for the first year or so, and then once he got all the people he wanted in, he supposedly has taken a step back and isn't so hands-on anymore. He's obviously looked at Chelsea and even when they were looking to buy it, they mentioned all the time about how they want to do this Liverpool model. They want to be this team that have a long-term plan where they're bringing in the academy products and
Incredibly
young
rare
players.
to do that though.
No, of course, but like
rare.
if you're going into football, that is the model you're going to want to replicate. If you haven't got the funds of, say, Man City, because look at what Liverpool have done. We've praised them however many times over the past 5 years or so. It's a guy that who knows? Maybe in 3 years' time we'll look back on it and go, there's 2 ways we look back on it. We go, what on earth happened there? Or we go, fair play, he had the balls to do it and it's worked out fantastically well.
It is a brave appointment.
Oh,
I
massive.
don't think it's a stupid one.
But
it
what
is a
other
brave
options did he have?
I do.
Because Pochettino was getting hammered by Chelsea fans online. That appointment
Yeah.
would have been murdered.
Or it would have been,
at Stamford
or it would have been
interesting.
like a Marco Rosa
I thought
or
it was.
something.
I thought it was really
who's probably
interesting
gonna
as
like
well to also apparently Chelsea were interested in the sporting manager as well. This like young guy that's also playing progressive football. I mean, the one worry, realistically, the only worry I have for Potter is. Just because we haven't seen him tested in that kind of scenario is dealing with players that are on over £100,000 a week, that are international stars for huge countries, with egos, which and like you kind of mentioned, I don't think obviously he's going to be asking Sterling to play left back, but when he is asking, say, Aubameyang to do more running for him, or he's asking, say,
but Aubameyang
Ziyech to do something.
Aubameyang doesn't have the clout at Chelsea either to be a problem and get away with it.
Sure,
Like, he'll just be hounded out of the club, and this isn't like an Andre
He's not club captain at
Villas-Boas.
Arsenal.
This isn't Andre Villas-Boas situation where there's a core of players who clearly, if you get on the wrong side of them, it's going to be hugely problematic for you. There are players on big money, but they're young, and I imagine he can mould them. They'll be amenable to improving, to changing. Well,
I mean, their personality, like Reece James, Mason Mount.
I was going to say, these are all guys that want to be in England's, in their various World Cup squads. They want to impress, don't they? They want to do a good job prior to November. So I don't see why it wouldn't work. I think it's probably a little bit overstated when people say, like, he's never worked at the top level.
He's got to take the jump
And I mean,
eventually.
yeah,
he has to take the job eventually.
exactly.
Like he can't forever be like, this guy is so
Yeah.
good. And
But also-
realistically, how much further can he take
But
Brighton?
flip it round. We've already
Right.
praised him for for improving players to the extent where they become very desirable by top 6 clubs. If you're creating players that are of sufficient quality to go and make an impression at those teams, why couldn't you then manage that caliber of player when you got there?
Yeah,
Like, it's bull.
If Cucurella is good enough to come from Brighton to play for Chelsea, then why isn't Potter good enough to come from Brighton to manage Chelsea? Like, I mean, it just seems like
He's a bargain at 20 mil if Cucurella's 60.
I just think it's like quite a smart appointment.
Yeah.
Like, especially as Chris says, because of the continuity tactically and setup wise. He obviously speaks the language, has coached in the league. Like they've played against him. Like they know that Brighton were like a solid side who played pretty attractive football.
Pretty amazing
and his
side,
style, and obviously a lot of the comparisons here are other guys who've made the step up from smaller clubs to bigger clubs in the Premier League. But most of those guys, Moyes types, their style of football didn't really suit that, whereas Potter, we've been saying, is playing a possession style of football, which is very cutback focused, and has been doing this for a while. Like, that style of football should scale onto a bigger team quite nicely. Obviously, it's a question how he'll do in the Champions League, but it's always a question how anyone will do in the Champions League. Look at Conte. People are still like, oh, well, Conte obviously can't manage in the Champions League. One of the best managers in the world. So, what are you going to do? I really like this hire. I think it's great. I can't wait to see if he's any good there.
Yeah,
and I think he will.
It's going to be fascinating. I think Tuchel's just been the victim of a cultural overhaul, which an owner coming in, spending that much money
I feel for
in
him,
that
though.
situation
So
has
much.
every right to do. But like Zach said, he's probably going to stroll into a top job, and we'll stop feeling for him in 6 months' time.
Yeah, when he's managing Real Madrid after Carlo Ancelotti leaves, or whatever the next step, like maybe he sits there and goes, how long's Pep got left at City, or whatever it might be.
What do you think then, as a Chelsea fan, is a realistic expectation for Potter this season? Because I do feel, I know that he's a long-term hire and it's a project and blah, blah, blah,
for sure.
it's a 10-year thing. But if you don't make the Champions League straight away, there's concerns, I think. Or if he's not in that amongst that top four after £300 million spent in the summer.
As long as he makes top 6, I think he's fine. I think the expectation is make top 4, especially that you've come in early enough to, like, it's not like, as I mentioned earlier, it's not like we're 12 games in and Chelsea are 9th and a good amount of points away. Like, realistically, he can make a change pretty easily and get into top 4 quite simply, unless things go
Simply. He should be manager.
well, I've said that before. But yeah, like I think, but if say it does go wrong, or like he is still testing things out, and there are going to be bumps in the road, like no matter what happens. But I would like to believe that by giving him a 5-year contract and by putting him on this huge wage, where if you are going to sack him, you're going to be spending a lot of money to do so, then you are committing to this long-term plan, and you are
He done
committing.
$100 million on Lukaku on a 5-year contract a year ago.
Well, he didn't, did he? Like Bowley and his consortium.
I know, but
didn't.
it's
I think it's
still-
hard to. You can't. I don't want to.
Football's ruthless.
Whilst I do
Nobody
agree,
did that,
whilst
so-
I do agree that like Chelsea's history is that like it is changing, and whilst their early history is sacking a manager after 6 games, the way they've committed to Potter suggests that they are looking to go long term.
The sacking's reminiscent of
I agree.
Ibrahimovic, Abramovich.
Yeah.
But then this is a really progressive
Like,
appointment, so it does signal some sort of change.
I think they've only given one other manager a 5-year deal before. Like it has always been like 4 or 3 or 2, whatever it might be. And so they kind of have to stick with Potter, because otherwise they're going to be paying out a lot of money to get rid of him. And
If he doesn't embarrass himself this season, he gets a full campaign next season, doesn't he?
100%. And even,
Top 6, I think he'll at least get.
and look, like
Football is just
Brighton
so-
got
football
to
is just so
mate,
short
Brighton last year
term,
got to
mate.
Brighton last year got to 9th. Like, do we realistically think, even if Potter like has a poor season, do we really think he's going to be dropping out the top 6?
He's a great
Like,
coach, isn't it? He's
exactly.
a great coach.
Like, I
but
think
football is just I really do think football's a short-term game, and I do think that
If he
there
can-
aren't
I think it's less so
results
at the
or-
moment than it has been for a while.
Really?
Yeah.
because I think everyone kind of
Look
agrees
at
that
the
like,
managers
Man
around
City
big
are going to
clubs.
win the league, and so like as long as you're kind of getting top 4 and you're going far in your
God,
competitions,
ruined football.
to a
I also
degree,
think
yeah.
American owners really despise like these huge payouts. I mean, I could be wrong on other fronts, but like the American owners with Klopp,
Yeah.
they clearly want to give him time, because the goal isn't like it was under Abramovich, which was really unique in the sense that if you're not winning me trophies, if you're not like putting me in the spotlight and my club in the spotlight, I will get rid of you. But I think he will get more time. I think it's probably more part of their kind of sporting culture landscape to see how things pan out in the medium term, rather than be so reactive.
And I slightly think as well that there's like obviously they have got Aubameyang and he will play in that, but I do think there'll be a shift to want to see a lot of the young boys play too. Like you can't be spending 20 million on Chukwuemeka, another 16 million on the Casadei from Inter Milan, and like and not
What
be
you signed him.
exactly like and not be kind of giving these guys decent minutes. Like you can't spend 20 million on an 18-year-old.
But then you can't spend 20 million on Aubameyang and not playing.
No, but yeah, Aubameyang will play. Like what I'm on about is like finding minutes to, and I think Potter will do that successfully. Is finding minutes to give Chukwuemeka half an hour here and maybe starting in
There's
this
definitely
game
going
and
to
so
be
forth.
exciting, like for youngsters. If you're there,
Oh,
like,
if you're Conor Gallagher,
if you were
mate, you
Brozier,
must be
you'd
Brozier,
buzzing with-
exactly.
with the news that Graham Potter's coming in.
100%.
Given
And Chelsea
how
do-
Brighton have set with Danny Welbeck.
Chelsea do currently have like the best academy in the world. It is the most productive academy that there
City's
is
is
in the
starting
game.
to
Amari
rival that, isn't it?
Hutchinson.
But,
that came from Arsenal as
and Arsenal is at the moment. They produce lots of players who've gone into the first team, but look at the players that have come out of Chelsea in recent seasons. I mean, it's pretty staggering stuff, and that actually should help them be self-sustaining in the long term because they do produce talent and they sell that talent really well. So I think Potter's kind of perfect for developing that as well as an economic kind of powerhouse, like as an economic engine for the club, as well as changing things on
I think we kind of all agree, don't we? Potter's a good hire. It's just not the best circumstances for given the Tuchel exit.
I mean, the best, well, not the best, but like if say Tuchel had got to mid-October, end of October, and the results were still poor and they were losing, they got beaten by Liverpool, whatever, on the weekend coming. Then I guess it's much easier to see it.
The best circumstances are to arrive pre-season and have pre-season with the team.
But you just can't, like, this pre-season coming. Imagine they sacked Tuchel before pre-season. That would have blown our minds even more so.
No less of an issue with sacking him then than I do now. After giving,
I think it would have been the same. I think it would have been the same level.
And they'd have been looking for a manager at the same time as trying to completely overhaul the back line. It would have been a pretty stressful situation. Maybe you might have saved the Aubameyang money, but you still would have had to spend an absolute load.
Yeah, but they were going to do that anyway. And Potter has now come into a team where he's going to have no training time. They're playing a game every 3 days. I just think.
I think that's where it comes in. Like, as we mentioned, the system. I don't think like the system's going to be that hard for the players to understand what he's saying realistically. And the players that he's got that's doing it, he's already got Cucurella that's been doing it. Ben Chilwell's not going to find it too well. You never know. Reece James is not going to find it too hard to understand Potter's system. I think that's for sure. Like he's got players that are adaptable that have played in similar systems at other clubs. Like it's not. As I said, I think it's weirdly going to end up being quite, fingers crossed, touch wood, seamless.
What do you guys think the problematic areas are for him then? Obviously, it's too early to start talking about January transfers, but I was thinking about this on the taxi on the way over, and I was thinking one of the first major moves that Potter made in terms of transforming Brighton and the way they play from, they used to be, sit in a deep block, didn't they? They used to spring counters, quite a robust in defence, but at retaining the ball, uninspiring in the final third or whatever. But he started by swapping out Matt Ryan for Sanchez.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
This is my number one.
I was going to say, do you think that the goalkeeper is probably the easiest area to upgrade in terms of serving that Potter system?
In terms of looking in January for a goalkeeper, like it wouldn't surprise me if it might just be easy links to do, but it wouldn't surprise me if Chelsea started looking at Sanchez from Brighton. Mendy, we've mentioned recently, has dropped off. Like he's not the same, whether it's confidence, whatever it is. Like he's not the same keeper. His feet, his ball.
He's so tall though.
Was he ever that good?
But to be honest, like that is
a really tall bloke.
But that was what you got to remember how bad it was with Kepa at times, and that it got to having just an average goalkeeper who is actually pretty good in the air normally, apart from recently. Was always going to be an improvement. Now the next step is looking for someone, especially with the way that actually Potter does want his goalkeepers playing football with their feet, and Mendy to a degree can do it slightly, but obviously it's not his strongest asset. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's one of Raya from Brentford wouldn't be a shock if that's.
How do we think he lines up then? We've spoken about the system, but personnel wise, probably has to go with Mendy to start with. Because he doesn't have a window, given that he's been bought in mid-season.
Unless
and then
Kepa
saying back
impresses
three is still going to be Koulibaly, Thiago Silva, Wesley Fofana.
Yeah, I think
there's a chance.
I think he might start with Aspi.
I think
Aspi.
No, I don't think Aspi. Aspi's looking rough, man.
Yeah, but I think he will like Aspi.
As a captain, sure.
Because we've said the same thing about Lallana or Welbeck, and look at the production that he's got out of them at Brighton.
And so did
Fofana and Koulibaly.
The midfield is a bigger problem.
I was going to say the only thing I was going to say is Cucurella might play centre back.
Why can't he just play Kovacic?
Because if he's totally fit, then great. But the thing is that this Chelsea situation for a while has been like when Conte plays, they're great, and when he doesn't, they're not. It's been pretty straightforward. They've been like that this season. When Conte played against Spurs, they were awesome. Without him, they were garbage. That's pretty much been the story for Chelsea. And I do often think as well, when you're seeing centre backs getting a rough ride in the press, generally that means that club has an issue in front of the centre backs at defensive midfield. I think when every centre back who plays for your club gets for performing badly, it usually means that they're not protected properly.
Yeah.
And so I do think that that's going to be an issue, like finding the protection in front of them. But creativity, that's been a problem as well. But you kind of imagine that putting Reece James back at right wing back goes quite a long way to solving that.
Yeah, and then
straight away.
Probably sticks with the sort of two floating eights that he has. Maybe that's like Mount and Gallagher. potentially.
Yeah, eventually, like
Maybe Havertz drops into one of those roles.
Maybe they might be a little bit wider than that.
You don't want Gallagher.
Yeah, playing kind of those inverted wingers, because you do see Trossard hug the touchline quite a lot, don't you? And you do see who generally plays out on the right for
Solly March.
For Brighton, Solly March, well, the right wing back. I think one of the problems, maybe problematic areas other than goalkeeper, might be Koulibaly. Just from what I've seen so far, I don't think he is going to be able to sort of progress playing the same way that Webster does for Potter at Brighton, and he was a really important component of that Brighton side and the way that they went to the next level, wasn't he? When he replaced sort of Shane Duffy for, what was it, 25 mil from Bristol City, was it? But everyone was kind of like, what on earth is happening here? But then he's proved worth every penny. And so I do think that maybe at 31, 32, adjusting to the physicality of the Premier League, I know sometimes that is a little bit overstated, but can he be that guy for Potter?
But maybe that's
that
where
resets all the play.
But maybe that's where Cucurella comes in, right? We saw him play left centre back as well.
Or Jorginho. Jorginho's a better passer than Potter's ever had in midfield. So maybe he can do it as well. Like, you need the passing from somewhere, but it doesn't always have to come from the same place. Like, it doesn't have to come from the keeper. It doesn't have to come from like your right-sided centre back. I think Koulibaly's distribution has always been really good. And you only need one of those guys to do it, and maybe that is where you try and find a home for someone like Aspi. You try and protect him so he can do that progression, but somebody there will be able to do it, even if it's just a matter of like giving it to Kovacic or giving it to Jorginho, and that person does it. Like the good thing about a better club with better players is that you've got way more ways of solving these problems. Whereas when you're at a smaller club, you tend to be like, if that guy's out injured, what do we do? And actually, Webster has not played that much. Like, Webster's missed big tracts of seasons under Potter, and they've managed to cope. So I think that getting the passing from somewhere, he'll be able to cope with at Chelsea.
It's a little bit more niche than goalkeeper, but it was just something that came to the forefront of my mind then. And obviously, Koulibaly, like at Napoli, always a very good conduit from defence to midfield, but didn't necessarily run the ball upfield in the same way that Webster has done. Like, his final third entries were absolutely nuts last season, weren't they, for example? So he lacks probably a little bit of that mobility. But maybe Potter was just, that was a requirement because he didn't have that mobility in midfield with the likes of Lallana, etc., etc. So it's, you don't know.
What happens with Rom when he comes back?
Rom will just go on. I think the plan already for Rom is go back on loan to Inter after. Like, maybe he
Slot
does
straight into the Potter number 9.
Maybe he does, like,
Sick.
Potter sees what he's like in pre-season, but like I think
Sick.
the assumption would be he goes back on loan or sold to Inter or something. Whatever happens there.
Redemption
I was gonna
tour.
say the one thing that I will find quite interesting is how Potter deals with like the low blocks that Chelsea constantly come up against.
That's
Like,
interesting, right?
Because, like, I think when you're Brighton, right, other teams play you and they think, okay, we can have a chance to kind of get something against you guys. Whereas, obviously, when you're at Chelsea, mostly everyone, plays against a deep block against us, and that's where Chelsea find a lot of their issues. They find it under Tuchel. Chelsea were pretty good at playing against teams that were willing to play football against them. We've seen that against his results against Pep.
Much worse than it was.
No, it really can't.
For the last 6 months.
It really can't. But that is something that I'm interested to see Potter take on once he has that realization.
It's a different
of, like,
demand of him, right?
Well, and there's a corollary problem of that as well, right? Which is that, like,
What?
corollary problem.
What's that?
Corollary meaning like kind of on a flip side or on a related note.
because of that.
Which is that when you're at Brighton, constructing a team which can hold possession and uses that defensively is really, really impressive, because teams do want to try and take points off you. Whereas when you're Chelsea, teams don't care. Like, they're not going to mind if you want to have all the ball, but you're not going to do anything with it. They're not bothered because teams are happy to take 1 point off Chelsea.
Yeah.
So the question will be, is there enough in the attack to progress it further and to unsettle defences, like Zach is saying? Because they are going to have to be more proactive. Now, it's not like his Brighton team haven't been proactive. They've been a high pressing side. They've been reasonably creative. They've underperformed every season, which is another question.
Apart from the start of this season.
But is that underperformance in expected goals over 3 years that he's been there?
Yeah.
Both in defence and attack. Is it something about his tactics that's doing that?
No.
Yeah.
I don't think it is
No,
either.
it's just the
You
quality
watch
of the
montages on Twitter of
people
Maupay,
missing
Connolly.
cutbacks, yeah.
Like, I am surprised he didn't have stroke on the touchline watching some of those chances go over the bar.
And now he's
Not that enjoyable.
and now he's added Raheem Sterling. Oh, he's got Raheem Sterling, who also has the montages of the.
Yeah,
but he's a better finisher.
but that's a massively
I'm only joking.
that's a massively overplayed narrative, isn't it? Because actually, he's as deadly in front of goal as Raheem Sterling. But yeah, his misses are like more blockbuster. But yeah, now he's got like strikers that perform at, I don't know, league average level at least.
I think you'll like Aubameyang as well.
At least.
Like,
I imagine that'll pan out.
I think I think Potter coming in as
Will
well.
he
Like,
like
looking at that squad, I think he's just over the moon. Like you've got the bunch of youngsters that are like. No, but he's got the bunch.
He's just happy to be here.
He's got the bunch of youngsters that he can obviously improve and progress, and obviously the academy. But then also, I think the experienced players he's also looking at and going, well, I can also get something out
Question
of
for
you
you
guys
then.
too.
How do you think he's going to do with the misfits? Like, what's he going to do with
Like
Pulisic, Ziyech, maybe Loftus-Cheek?
Well, this is like just like when Tuchel came in and Alonso at left. He got something out of Alonso, who obviously fell out of touch with Lampard. I think everyone's got that clean sheet now, where they can kind
Clean
of
slate.
Clean
do you,
slate.
see-
That's
do you
right.
see any clean sheet? That'd be quality. Plenty of them to come. But do you see any one of them being a real winner of his arrival?
I think
Is there any
like
standout?
the two that's always in my mind, like Callum Hudson-Odoi, obviously he's on loan at Bayer Leverkusen, that's going to be interesting for next year. But the two interesting ones, in my opinion, is Pulisic and Ziyech. We know that Ziyech has creative ability and has the potential to do something out of nothing. He's just not worked out in the Premier League, and maybe a manager like it didn't really work out under Lampard, though he didn't necessarily play that long and he was injured for quite a long period of it. Definitely didn't work under Tuchel. Will Potter like him? I mean, he's not necessarily to be fair, actually, he's not that bad of a presser, and I think it's probably understated how much he can do that. And Pulisic, like we've seen Pulisic have the potential to be fantastic and win games out of nothing and score hat-tricks when needed in the Premier League. But over the past year, since that hamstring injury he pulled up against Arsenal in the FA Cup, like we've just never seen the same player. But I think from the off, it will be Kai Havertz, it will be Mason Mount, it will be the guys that we kind of already saw under Tuchel playing.
Maybe Gallagher will be a huge beneficiary of it,
I think,
because
yeah.
he's been able to like totally revolutionise McAllister at the start of this season, hasn't he? He's transformed him from a 10 to like a 6. Pascal Gross, like we've said, has gone from central midfielder to this false number 9 to midfield
Havertz,
fucking
stop.
virtuoso.
Mate, ideally, Havertz is the one that does finally go on a step.
Maybe Gallagher evolves from someone that isn't just great at hounding people out of possession and arriving late in the box. Maybe there is more to him than that, and Potter will hopefully unlock that. But we're not spoken about Thiago Silva at all when we're talking about the defence, because Koulibaly against West Ham, it was Koulibaly on the left, Fofana on the right, Thiago Silva down the centre, isn't it? Do you think it's just going to remain that back three?
Definitely.
As I said,
Thiago Silva's the best centre
Ben
back.
Chilwell.
The only change I can see is maybe
Chilwell.
Cucurella going left centre back, possibly, for wanting then Ben Chilwell at left wing back. Like Ben Chilwell obviously adds.
I don't think there's a
Attacking
guarantee that
sense.
Cucurella is the left wing back for
Yeah,
Chelsea. Just
neither.
because he's worked with Potter before, Potter didn't have the opportunity to work with Ben
Same
Chilwell.
with
He might arrive and go, Ben Chilwell's output in the attacking areas is we know how high. His wing backs are basically wingers.
Yeah.
So Reece James and Chilwell arriving in the box, he might say Reece James and Chilwell, has he's better going forward than Cucurella. Just because he's played with Cucurella before doesn't necessarily mean that he is immediately going to be the guy over a player like Ben Chilwell, who historically has had much better attacking output than Marc Cucurella.
You saw it with Tuchel and Pulisic. Like Tuchel's the guy that put Pulisic on the map, and then didn't really like him too much at Chelsea. Like, so yeah, I think it's a very, very good point. There are when the games go ahead, whatever happens, whether he's got 2 weeks or what, we'll see. But I think it will be a very similar starting lineup to what we probably all expect anyway. And like I think with Thiago Silva, every manager that comes in is probably just impressed that he's still doing it at 38 years of age.
Should we touch on Brighton as well, what it means for them? Because it's a disaster, isn't it, really, for them? I know they get the 20
I don't support them anymore. That Potter's gone, so
Really?
I definitely don't support Chelsea as a result of Potter arriving. So
I do feel really sorry for the fans.
You'll
because
support Brighton.
Do you
if
like
they-
Chelsea a
if they
little bit
hire
more though
Ange.
now?
Why would you say that?
if they hire
You
Ange.
would like Brighton though, to be fair.
Because
I'd retire from
it's
football.
been a pretty bad summer for Brighton in terms of exits of players. Now to
And coaches.
This is the
now to
price you
have
pay for being a fantastically
the
well-run
worst
club, isn't it?
News possible of not only head coach, 4 coaches, goalkeeping coach, assistant head of recruitment leaving too.
They've been planning for this since 2020, though, haven't they? They've had like a constant shortlist of of managers, people that we've seen go on and do good jobs elsewhere. Like Steve Cooper was apparently shortlisted. Who else was there?
Yeah, Russell Martin.
Russell Martin. Well, I don't know about Russell Martin. But...
Ange.
Yeah, well, that was just Twitter chat, wasn't it?
Yeah, Ange's just Twitter chat. I think the 4 names.
Rodgers.
I think the 4 names.
No, that's been bandied around.
Really?
Yeah.
I think the 4 names of Steve Coopers and your Russell Martins and stuff. I think Adam Lallana is potentially a candidate as well to step up internally, isn't he? I do think that they'll probably just about be fine, but just to the timing with Dan Ashworth leaving in the last 6 months and then losing Graham Potter, it's just a really big job for David Weir to get that next piece of recruitment right when you've lost Basuma as well, you've lost Cucurella, all of the backroom staff needs turnover.
So
I feel for him badly.
Have you got any names on the continent or domestically?
What do we think about
speaking,
Tedesco now? Tedesco to Brighton.
I was thinking De Zerbi, because there's kind of parallels of what De Zerbi did at Sassuolo with what Potter's done at Brighton. I think 2 8th place finishes, was widely heralded for playing a great brand of football. There is maybe he wasn't defensively minded as Potter. I think he played a 4-2-3-1 and went for it a little bit more in games. But great at retaining possession, like Potter sides have been. So stylistically, might be a decent fit. And of course, had to leave Shakhtar because of what's happening in that region. So he might be worth a punt.
I think they are the sort of club that would go for somebody like that. His name's just escaped me now, but is it Kjetil?
Yeah,
the Danish manager. Yeah.
Knudsen.
Yeah, I think
from Bodo Glimt.
Yeah, I think these are the sorts of names that will be more linked with Brighton than some of the classic Premier League.
They want a progressive manager, don't they? Rather than the
they're looking for
going back to
Frank
Houghton and stuff like that.
Thomas Frank
They could make a really cool hire. I really hope that they just pluck somebody out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And introduce us to a new talent. I think that'd be really,
Bodo
really
Glimt
exciting.
manager. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, that feels quite Brighton-y.
Because he was sensational last year.
And they make these hires from interesting places. You can understand why they'd have been thinking about Ange, because obviously they've got an extremely focused scouting network in Japan. So it would make sense that he's somebody they've looked at. They also have relationships with clubs in Belgium, so they might be looking at guys from the Belgian league. So who knows?
Some manager, Ange.
Yeah. Where do we think Brighton finish now this season then? Because they are currently flying, aren't they, up into the top 4, and I think people were probably talking about pre-Potter as being legitimate sort of 7th place Europa Conference League contenders.
Brighton going to Europe.
Do we see them? Do they now have
totally unfair to maintain those aspirations? Yeah, I'm at 12th. Let's just say.
Yeah,
that would be fine though.
Mid-table, lower mid-table.
Because although Potter, we all love him, and he was an amazing coach. He was only rocking a 31% win rate at Brighton.
That's because he took over.
Which is less than Frank Lampard is currently operating.
It was a rough transitional period though, from Chris Hughton to his brand of football, and he suffered a lot of
draws,
unnecessary L's, and
a lot of draws.
And draws, in that period. Yeah, currently worse than Lampard's record at Everton.
Yeah,
sure. I know,
but
win
obviously,
rates, win rates without context.
Yeah, exactly.
Tuchel had a worse win rate than Ancelotti, Conte, Sarri. So
it's obviously bullshit.
And whoever comes in needs to shepherd them through till Christmas time, and then they'll get a good month to work on the squad, especially because a bunch of those players will not go to the World Cup, which actually might benefit some of the smaller clubs down the stretch, because their players might be fresher than the guys who have gone off to the World Cup, from Chelsea, from Arsenal, from City, whoever. So yeah, all you've got to do is get to Christmas in reasonable shape, and then you essentially get your own pre-season. Should
we finish with a prediction for Chelsea as well under Potter? Where do we think they finish, and what do they win? Because where do we where did we all say first? Where did we all say pre-season? I had Chelsea 5th in my pre-season.
I had 4th or 3rd.
I think I had them
4th.
I said top 4. I know that for a fact.
You had them 3rd.
I don't know.
I put Spurs dropping out.
3rd, 4th.
Okay, you had them 3rd. Chris, where did you have
I'm trying to remember. I think 3rd. I think my contriversial call was Tottenham 4th, Arsenal 5th, maybe. But
I said Spurs.
All the seasons blend into one, don't they?
What do we think now then? Is there revisionism over those predictions following Graham Potter's arrival and Thomas Tuchel's sacking?
Well, unfortunately for him, he's come in at a time when, unlike Lampard, when Lampard finished 4th on 66 points, I want to say.
Yeah. All the other teams are playing very well.
Yeah, all the other teams have their together now. So finishing 6th is still a perfectly serviceable first season, in my opinion. I'd 5th or 6th. I mean, they've not started great, have they?
Yeah.
I mean, surrendering 9 points on various teams around them already is costly. 9.6 points.
No, 6. Yeah.
Yeah, 6.
Well,
They've lost 2 games in the Prem.
7 technically.
But they're
because
5
the
off
Spurs-
top, right?
the Spurs draw.
They're only 5 points off us.
Expectation 4th, and like, but then if it's 6th,
Prediction?
like 8th, 4th. Why not 4th?
Fourth,
Yeah, 4th.
okay.
Absolutely fine.
That.
Yeah, same 4.
I hope he brings back the beard.
I think I'm going to stick
he
with
shave
my.
it? I think he's still
not
got it.
fully. I liked it when he was really grizzly.
I think I'm going to stick with my pre-season
Has to
5th.
keep the beard.
And I think that missing out on the Champions League will be bitter blow. Bitter blow. Although I still
Oh
think
my
he'll be fine.
god, you just that's what you,
Joe is gagging for it to go
You're
wrong.
always
I
just
didn't know
like
you were
Going
such
for
a-
it to
making
go
a
well. I really
little
want
wish.
Potter to do well. I really like Graham Potter. But
I didn't
just
realise
think
you were such a Tuchel acolyte.
I just think it's crazy, man. I think
Interviewed
it's
him
crazy.
once and found
But what do
nothing.
you guys at home think about Thomas Tuchel's firing and obviously the hiring of Graham Potter? And where do you think Chelsea are going to finish in the division? Let us know in the comments below. Do we have anything to add? Any other topics anybody wants to discuss? We've got 4 men on the show.
Well, we don't know exactly when this is going out
yeah.
because of the Queen's passing. So I was going to say go and watch Team Talk that went live yesterday, but who knows? Team Talk might be live tomorrow. Just look out for the next episode of Team Talk.
It's coming.
In the next 24 hours.
Which
yeah.
was shot before Tuchel was sacked.
Yes, and does include chat about where Tuchel ranks in the best manager
Quality
league.
timing.
So I'm sticking by what I said entirely on there.
Yeah, I wouldn't change anything.
No.
that we
Yeah,
said
no,
on
I
that.
Wouldn't change
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
Although Kieran absolutely delighted with the news. Kieran absolutely delighted with the news. Put it that way. Right, that's it for another episode of Sunday Vibes. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button, hit subscribe. Thanks very much for watching, everybody. See ya. Bye.